Carnage. Back in the early 90s, Marvel had Venom riding high, too high. Editorial worried that Eddie Brock's Lethal Protector Act might burn out fast. Writer David Michelinie came up with a contingency plan: kill Brock off and replace him with a darker, deadlier symbiote. That plan's name was Cletus Cassidy, a death row inmate with no moral compass, the kind of guy who made Eddie look like a polite neighbor. Then Marvel pivoted. Instead of ditching Venom, they kept both. In Amazing Spider-Man number 361, Cassidy's cellmate Brock escapes, a piece of the alien symbiote stays behind, and the result is Carnage, a living weapon bonded to a full-blown sociopath. The art team leaned in hard on the horror. Jagged teeth, writhing tendrils, and a blood-red body that looked like it wanted to leap off the page. Carnage rampaged. His debut arc, Carnage, in 1992, brought together Spider-Man and Venom in an uneasy alliance just to stop him. The character fit perfectly into the early 90s comic boom, where bigger, bloodier, and more extreme meant more sales. Fans ate it up. Carnage headlined his own stories like Maximum Carnage, became a regular in Spider-Man games and cartoons, and decades later showed up in Venom. Let there be Carnage. A villain born as a backup plan became a franchise in his own right. Luke Cage. 1972 was peak blaxploitation at the movies. Shaft, Superfly, and Foxy Brown were packing theaters, and Marvel's editorial wanted in. The marching orders were simple: create a street-tough black hero who could tap into that wave. Archie Goodwin, George Tuska, and John Romita Sr. put the pieces together fast. The result was Luke Cage, hero for hire #1, a bulletproof ex-con in a yellow shirt, steel headband, and chains for a belt. Marvel didn't plan for a decades-long career. The idea was to cash in while the fad lasted, sell a few issues, and move on. But Cage stuck. His debut dropped him in the heart of Harlem, running a private hero-for-hire business, taking cases from everyday New Yorkers. It was gritty, colorful, and different from the cosmic and masked heroes dominating Marvel's lineup. The series evolved, sales cooled, so Marvel paired him with Iron Fist in 1978's Power Man and Iron Fist. That odd couple dynamic, street-level muscle meets mystical martial arts, gave the book a second wind. By the 80s, Luke Cage had survived the trend that birthed him, becoming one of Marvel's few black heroes with ongoing relevance. His influence carried forward into the 2000s when Brian Michael Bendis made him a central figure in New Avengers. And when Netflix adapted Luke Cage in 2016, it introduced him to a whole new audience, blending superhero action with social commentary and Harlem culture. Taskmaster. Writer David Michelinie and artist George Perez weren't crafting Marvel's next big recurring player. Taskmaster was built as a one-arc antagonist, the kind of flashy obstacle meant to test the Avengers and disappear. The gimmick was simple but striking. Captain America's shield throws, Hawkeye's precision shots, even Spider-Man's acrobatics. He could copy them all after a single look. His costume, with its hooded cloak and skull mask, popped off the page, and readers noticed. Letters started coming in, praising the new villain's look and skill set. Marvel didn't scrap him after that first appearance. Instead, Taskmaster popped up again, training henchmen for hire in his so-called villain academies. His role shifted from world destroyer to hired specialist, someone both heroes and criminals could cross paths with. The unpredictability of whether he'd fight you or train you made him stand out in a sea of generic baddies. Through the 80s and 90s, he became a go-to cameo, clashing with Spider-Man, Daredevil, Deadpool, and the X-Men. His adaptability made him a natural fit for video games and animated series, where he often doubled as a boss fight designed to throw every move back at the player. By the time the MCU put him into Black Widow in 2021, Taskmaster had already built a 40-year resume off a single throwaway concept. Created to fill a gap in an Avengers story, he turned into one of Marvel's most versatile utility villains. Morbius. In 1971, Marvel had a vampire problem, and they couldn't make one. The Comics Code Authority still had restrictions on supernatural creatures, so classic undead bloodsuckers were off the table. Roy Thomas and Gil Kane decided to bend the rules. Their workaround? A biochemist named Michael Morbius, who tried to cure his rare blood disease with an experimental serum and turned himself into a living vampire. No magic, no coffins, just science gone wrong. Morbius debuted in Amazing Spider-Man number 101, right after Stan Lee stepped away from scripting duties. That issue also marked the first Spider-Man story not written by Lee, which gave Thomas room to push new boundaries. The character's look, pale skin, red eyes, and a jagged mouth snarl leaned into horror without crossing into the supernatural band. Marvel didn't have a grand plan for him. Morbius was meant to shake up Spider-Man's rogues gallery and see how readers reacted to his safe, horror villain under the code. The experiment worked. Morbius appeared in Marvel Team Up, Adventure into Fear, and even headlined solo stories as the code gradually loosened, opening the door for Blade, Dracula, and other supernatural elements. Through the 90s, he became a cult favorite, appearing in the Spider-Man, the animated series with those infamous plasma-sucking handholds, a network-friendly way to avoid showing biting. Decades later, Sony brought him to live action in 2022's Morbius, leaning fully into his anti-hero status. The Winter Soldier. For decades, Marvel had a short list of comic book deaths that were considered permanent. At the top sat Bucky Barnes, Captain America's wartime sidekick, who supposedly died in a World War II explosion. Writers treated it as sacred canon. Then, in 2004, Ed Brubaker took over Captain America and pitched the unthinkable: bring Bucky back. Brubaker expected a hard no. Instead, Marvel said yes. His idea was to rewrite Bucky's fate, not dead, but found by the Soviets, brainwashed, and turned into an elite assassin known only as the Winter Soldier, a man with a metal arm, hidden memories, and a trail of missions stretching through decades of covert operations. When he appeared in Captain America #1, 2005, readers got a mix of shock and intrigue. This wasn't a sidekick in bright tights anymore. This was a cold, efficient killer crossing paths with his old friend in a modern espionage thriller. The mystery of whether he could be saved gave Brubaker's run a heartbeat. The gamble paid off. The Winter Soldier arc revitalized Captain America as a top-tier book, earning critical acclaim and redefining the character. Within a few years, Bucky even carried the Captain America mantle after Steve Rogers' apparent death. The story's impact went beyond comics. When Marvel Studios adapted it into Captain America, the Winter Soldier in 2014, the character became a core figure in the MCU, anchoring multiple films and Disney Plus's The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Miles Morales. In 2011, Marvel killed off Ultimate Peter Parker. The decision left a gaping hole in the Ultimate Universe. Spider-Man was its flagship, and suddenly there was no one in the mask. Editorial needed a successor fast. Writer Brian Michael Bendis and artist Sarah Pichelli were tasked with creating someone new, someone who could carry the weight of Spider-Man's legacy in a modern way. Around the same time, a moment from pop culture was making waves. Donald Glover wearing Spider-Man pajamas in an episode of Community. That visual, combined with growing calls for more diversity in comics, became part of the conversation inside Marvel. The result was Miles Morales, a Brooklyn teenager of African-American and Puerto Rican heritage who gained spider powers after being bitten by another genetically altered spider. Miles debuted in Ultimate Fallout #4 only weeks after Peter's death. The response was polarizing. Some fans embraced the bold change, others rejected the idea of anyone but Peter in the role. Marvel leaned in, building his character through grounded stories about juggling school, family, and hero work while honoring Peter's memory. Over the years, Miles earned his place. His popularity exploded beyond the Ultimate Universe, eventually merging into Marvel's main continuity. Then came 2018's Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse, which turned him into a global phenomenon and introduced him to millions who had never read a comic. America Chavez. In 2011, Marvel needed characters for a new miniseries called Vengeance, and America was pulled from the shelf and dropped in. She had no fleshed-out origin, no clear role, and only a handful of appearances to her name. Her debut leaned more on attitude and style, the Stars and Stripes jacket, the no-nonsense swagger, than deep backstory. It wasn't until her stint in Young Avengers that readers started to see her potential. There, writers expanded her personality and hinted at her unique powers, planting the seeds for a more defined history. The real breakthrough came in The Ultimates, 2015, where her multiverse-hopping ability became central to the story. Slowly, the gaps in her origin were filled in, revealing a childhood in the utopian parallel and a tragic loss that set her on a path through countless realities. Representation became a big part of her presence in Marvel. America is one of the few queer Latina superheroes in mainstream comics. That identity resonated with readers, even when the execution of her solo stories drew mixed reviews. Her leap to live action in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness brought her to a worldwide audience, cementing her as a Marvel staple. She-Hulk. In late 1979, Marvel caught wind of a legal headache brewing. CBS was riding high with the Incredible Hulk TV series, and studio executives were tossing around the idea of introducing a female Hulk character. If they created her first, they'd own the rights. Marvel wasn't about to let that happen. Stan Lee, who rarely scripted full books by this point, was called in to handle the job personally. Artist John Buscema joined him, and together they worked at breakneck speed to debut her before CBS could make a move. The result was Savage She-Hulk #1, hitting shelves in February 1980, a turnaround of just a few months from concept to print. Jennifer Walters, Bruce Banner's cousin, made her entrance as a Los Angeles lawyer who's critically injured and needs a blood transfusion. Bruce steps in, and his gamma-infused blood saves her life while also giving her the Hulk's power. Unlike Bruce, Jennifer retained her intelligence when transformed, making her a hero who could fight villains one minute and argue cases in court the next. The rushed launch meant She-Hulk's early adventures were standard superhero fare, but she stuck around long enough to evolve. In the 1980s, John Byrne's sensational She-Hulk broke the fourth wall, turning her into one of Marvel's most self-aware comedic leads. That mix of humor, brains, and brawn became her defining trait for decades. Iron Patriot, Norman Osborn. In 2009, Marvel's Dark Reign storyline flipped the superhero world upside down. Norman Osborn, fresh off killing the Skrull Queen during Secret Invasion, was suddenly the public's golden boy. The government handed him control of SHIELD's replacement, HAMMER, and with it came a chance to rewrite his image. Writers Brian Michael Bendis and Matt Fraction wanted a visual to match the political power grab. The solution came quickly: combine the red, white, and blue of Captain America's shield with the tech of Iron Man's armor. Artist Adi Granov designed a sleek suit that projected Patriot to the press, while hiding the fact that Osborn was still the same manipulative Green Goblin underneath. The armor's debut in Dark Avengers #1 was pure theater. Osborn formed his own Avengers lineup, stacking it with villains posing as heroes, and positioned himself as Iron Man's replacement. The Iron Patriot suit became his stage costume, a walking PR stunt that let him stand in front of cameras as America's new champion while running a covert, self-serving agenda behind the scenes. In-universe, it worked for a while. The public bought the image, the media played along, and the real heroes were left scrambling to counter him without looking like traitors. Out of universe, the design struck a chord with fans, enough that Marvel kept the Iron Patriot branding alive even after Osborn's fall, eventually giving the armor to James Rhodes in the MCU SpiderGwen. Marvel launched Edge of Spider-Verse in 2014, a 5-issue miniseries exploring alternate versions of Spider-Man. Issue #2 was meant to be a quirky detour. What if Gwen Stacy, not Peter Parker, had been bitten by the radioactive spider? Writer Jason Latour and artist Robbie Rodriguez built her world from scratch. Drummer in a punk band, police captain for a dad, and a costume that instantly stood out. White hood, pink accents, teal webbing. The story was never pitched as an ongoing concept. It was a one-off, designed to feed into the Spider-Verse crossover event. But when the issue hit, something strange happened. Social media lit up with fan art, cosplay exploded within weeks, and SpiderGwen trended long after the book left shelves. Marvel pivoted fast. By early 2015, SpiderGwen #1 launched as her own series, picking up right after the one-shot. The creative team leaned into her unique setting on Earth 65, where Peter Parker died and Gwen carried the guilt of his death. The book's blend of kinetic art, neon palette, and sharp dialogue made it one of Marvel's freshest launches in years. Spider-Gwen's popularity spread beyond comics. She became a merchandising juggernaut. Hoodies, figures, and even Funko Pops flew off shelves. Her leap to animation in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 2018 cemented her status, giving her a voice and personality that matched the energy fans had been projecting onto the character since day one. Adam Warlock. In 1967, Fantastic Four numbers 66 to 67 introduced a strange new figure, known only as him. He emerged from a cocoon created by a group of scientists called the Enclave, who wanted to engineer the perfect human. His debut was brief, a golden-skinned being with incredible power, born fully formed and without a real purpose. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby moved on, and him floated through a few appearances, including a scrap with Thor, without any grand plan for his future. That future came years later when writer-artist Jim Starlin took over. In Marvel Premiere and then Warlock, Starlin reshaped the character entirely. Him was reborn as Adam Warlock, given the Soul Gem, and cast as a messianic figure in a sprawling cosmic saga. The tone shifted from generic superhuman to philosophical space epic, with Warlock caught between godhood and humanity, facing the dark mirror of himself in Magus. Through the 70s, Warlock became a key player in Marvel's cosmic corner. Starlin's work tied him directly to Thanos and the Infinity Stones, laying the groundwork for some of Marvel's most ambitious storylines. Though the character drifted in and out of publication, he kept returning whenever Marvel needed a heavy hitter for a cosmic crisis. His influence reached beyond comics when the MCU teased his arrival in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, finally delivering in volume. 3 decades after starting as an unnamed Perfect Man, Adam Warlock had become a cornerstone of Marvel's cosmic mythology. And that's it. So, which of these accidental creations do you think changed Marvel's universe the most? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more amazing videos like this one.